everybody, this is Janice of Growing Light Wellness and Yoga. A few weeks ago, I got to 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel, so to celebrate, I put out a poll asking people what kind of yoga video they wanted to see. And, pretty overwhelmingly, the vote was for restorative. I did post a little standing flow last week because I hadn't had time to shoot this one yet, but I'm really hoping that you enjoy this relaxing video. It's going to be a little short. And it's also what I like to refer to as restorative light, because in traditional restorative yoga, the poses can be held anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, but in this practice, we'll probably limit it to about 3 to 4 minutes, if that, per pose. But the goal is the same. So a lot of times people ask me, well, what's the difference between yin and restorative? They seem very much alike, and I'm sure if you're a yoga teacher or a serious yoga student, you've probably also heard this question. The difference is pretty subtle, but as they both can use props, they both rely on long holds. But in yin yoga, the focus is really to get into the fascia and feel that deep sensation of stretch. So to really get into that stretch and that release of muscles. And restorative gives you a release in a whole different way. It's about resting, about really limiting sensation, also using props, and we'll use just a few today. And again, in a traditional restorative class, these poses are held for quite a long time, and you may have sandbags and bolsters and blankets and blocks. And this practice today, I have one blanket and I have 2 sets of blocks just in case. You'll probably be able to get away with just one set. You may want to have an extra pillow or cushion nearby. Remember that our goal today is to really limit the sensation of stretch and to really get into a state of relaxation. And the reason we limit the stretch is because even a subtle sensation of stretch in the body can trigger that sympathetic nervous system fight or flight response, where when we have a complete relaxation, we get into our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, and then eventually we'll achieve that same goal of release and opening through the muscles. So I'm glad that you're joining me. You may see my chickens wandering around here. There's one now. But we're going to get into a little bit of practice. So I'd like to start, actually, since we're sitting, let's find a comfortable seat. You can take a block and place it under your hips if that makes things more comfortable for you, or maybe just your folded blanket so that your hips are slightly elevated, and feel that release through your spine. Tuck the chin slightly, reach up through the crown of the head. On the inhale, bring your attention to the top of your head, let it drift down the body. Just feeling where you are right now. What sensations are present? What thoughts are present? What emotions are present? What are you holding on to? And with your next exhale, see if you can let that go. We'll take just a few breaths here. And then gently, if you're sitting on the block, ease yourself forward and remove that. And come right down onto your back. So we'll take this first initial pose on our back. You can take your blanket, lift your hips slightly, and slide that folded blanket or towel under the hips. So we're below the low back, really kind of at the top of the butt, supporting that sacrum and even the butt a little bit. Bring your feet wide to the edges of your mat and let your knees fall towards each other. Hands can rest on your belly. Maybe one hand on the belly and one hand on the heart. And feel the gentle rise and fall of your belly. See if you can release any tension here. Let the weight of your hips sink into the blanket. Maybe let your eyes close as you fall into a state of deep ease and rest. Remembering that it's okay to do less. We don't always have to try and do more. And that sometimes when you're doing less, you're actually doing more for yourself. Let the breath be natural and easy, no efforting over the breath. Feel yourself supported by the mat, by the ground, by the earth. Let yourself be both heavy and light at the same time. Light as in releasing any effort, releasing any gripping. And heavy as in sinking, dissolving into the mat. Let your next breath deepen slightly. Feel the belly rise, feel the chest rise. And feel yourself soften and empty on the exhale. Let the breath deepen a little more. Let your eyes flutter open. Deep breath in through the nose, sigh it out. Start to walk your feet in to about hip distance apart. Release your hands on the inhale, lift your hips and slide that blanket out. We'll find a tiny bit of movement here in between poses. So now just swishing the knees from side to side. Very, very gently and slowly. And then we straighten the legs. Maybe you give your hips a little lift and push towards the toes to reset. Turn the palms up, roll the shoulders away from the ears. Bend the right knee and bring it into your left thigh as if you're finding a tree pose. So just like you would do tree pose in a standing position, we're finding this tree pose lying down. If you have your block nearby, I'd like you to try this with a block under that right hip or right knee, wherever it feels right to you. You can also use your blanket here if the block feels like too much. And remember that you have multiple options for height on the block. Our goal here is to remove any sensation from the pose. So let that left foot relax. Let that right knee be heavy. Let your breath be effortless. Release any efforting over the thoughts. So let whatever comes up, come up. Sometimes these slower practices can be even more challenging because there's just so much that comes to the surface when we're still. Think about a pond or a body of water and how when it's moving, it's very difficult to see what's under there. But when it's still, you may be able to see all the way to its depths and to really see what's going on, that inner life. So meet yourself with a curiosity here, as if you're gazing down into a clear, still pond. As you exhale, release any tension. Just follow the breath, but let it be natural. There's no specific breath for this practice, except for those cues to deepen between poses as a signal that we're getting ready to move. Let the hips release, the groin release, and relax. You may start to feel things come up, emotions, sensations. But the physical sensation in this pose should be pretty limited. Commit yourself to rest and stillness. Let your next breath deepen just slightly. And maybe bring your attention to that inner thigh and groin area and see what you're feeling there. Let that exhale release any tension. Deepen the breath. Big deep inhale in and exhale with a sigh. Reach down with your right hand and point that right knee toward the sky. Hug both knees into your chest and give yourself a very slow, gentle rock. Let these movements between poses be deliberate and slow, almost like you're moving through honey. Let them be sweet. Now hug that left knee in, send the right leg out long along the mat. Take your block and place it on the left. Let the left knee open to the side, left foot to right inner thigh. Left thigh resting on the block. Maybe the palms turn up. Maybe you rest one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart. You may find the block needs a little different positioning on this side. I'm going to take my block on the medium height because this hip is a little tighter for me. And I want to minimize the sensation of stretch here. I may adjust that as we rest into the pose, but it just felt a little too tense and a little too stretchy on that lowest height. Let your breath be natural and easy. Let your body be supported. Feel the weight of the leg on the block, but very little sensation of stretch. Let the right foot relax, maybe opening out to the side. And just notice the different parts of your body. Notice how your shoulders feel on the mat. Notice how your left toes contact the inside of that right thigh. Feel your hips on the mat. Now I'm feeling a little more ease in this pose, so I'm going to try turning my block to the lowest height. And that feels much better for me than it did at the beginning of this pose. So you can see that just through stillness, we're increasing our openness and our flexibility. Feel the back of your head on the mat. Release any tension in the head, the neck, the shoulders, the face, the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet. And maybe it helps to repeat a word to yourself like stillness. Or one that I particularly like during these practices is soften. So with each exhale, I say to myself, soften. Soften. And I can feel myself become softer and more still, more gentle with myself. Less disturbed by thoughts. More calm, like the surface of that still pond. Feel yourself sink into the mat and into that stillness. Maybe with your next exhale, you bring your attention to that inner thigh. Just see if you're gripping or holding anything there. See what comes up for you physically, emotionally, mentally. As you start to deepen the breath, maybe deepening your connection to the various parts of your body, deepening your connection to the earth. Start to make the breath a little deeper. And feel if that has any effect on your sensation, your physical sensations. Deepen that breath a little bit more. And then bring that left hand under the left knee, point that left knee to the sky, hug both knees into the chest, again like you're moving through honey with that sweetness, that sticky slowness. Just gently rocking side to side. And then we'll place both feet down. You're going to take your block here and put it out to the side. You may want more than one block. I'll show you a couple variations. I got a bug on mine. So maybe you need a couple of blocks for this. We're going to move into a twist. So bend your left knee. Keep the shoulders rooted to the mat. And start to roll to your right, so that that knee rests on those blocks. Now, you can place a block under your thigh and one under your knee, maybe both on that medium height. You can take your blanket if your shoulder feels like it's peeling up, and you can place that blanket under your shoulder to give yourself a little more support here. So as I roll onto my side, I'll show you from the other direction, my shoulder is still supported. So I'm actually going to go with my right knee to the left. So here, see how this is nice under my shoulder here? All right, I'm going to face you again. So find whatever variation feels good to you. Another option for this is to straighten that top leg and put the block under the ankle. So wherever you're feeling the least sensation. Remember that this is a restorative practice, not a yin practice. So we want to actually take away some of that physical sensation. And again, let yourself be supported by your props. Feel the opening through the spine. Maybe that right leg is straight, maybe it's bent slightly, whatever feels best to you here. And your gaze, bring your gaze to the right. So you're looking in the same direction that you're twisting. This takes a little pressure off the neck. If that doesn't feel good, you can keep the head centered. And arms can be out, or maybe the right hand rests on top of that left knee. Now for me, this variation feels good. With the leg not completely straight, I'm still a little bent at the knee, and I'm supporting under my knee and my ankle here. But sometimes if I have both blocks under my knee, I still feel a little downward pressure there. And remember that you have multiple options for the settings of your block. So even if you feel like the highest height is right for you, that is perfectly fine. And we won't stay here as long. Start to deepen the breath. And then take those blocks out and just kind of make a little bicycling motion with that leg, and maybe sweep it back and forth. Again, very slow and deliberate, mindful, moving through this whole entire range of motion. And then we'll turn to the other side. So I'm going to turn so that you can still see me. So you're going to find your way onto your back. Remember, you can use that blanket under the shoulder if that feels good. Find the position for your blocks. So maybe you're here, but again, for me, or maybe you're using 3 blocks or more. For me, I kind of like the bug's back. I kind of like to have my ankle supported as well. But I can always take another block and kind of stick it in here under my calf, or a blanket or a bolster, whatever you have. If you have a bolster, the bolster is wonderful for this stretch because you can lay it lengthwise under that leg and get a great release. Let your gaze be gentle. Maybe the eyes are closed. Let the shoulders be relaxed and easy. Let yourself sink into the ground and into those blocks. And remember, we're not going for sensation here. We're going for ease and stillness. With your next exhale, see if you can release a little bit more tension in that leg. And take a couple more breaths here. And then you can start to take the blocks out. And maybe make some little rotations with that leg, like you're bicycling with one leg. Maybe sweeping it back and forth, whatever you're doing, moving gently and deliberately. And then we'll roll onto our backs again, hug those knees in. Really gentle, slow circles here. And then for our last pose, this one can be a little tricky to find a restorative version with minimal props. When you're in the classic restorative class, like I said, you usually have a lot of props. So I'm going to use a blanket for this, and I have my blanket rolled, like folded and kind of rolled a little bit to make sure it's not bunchy. And then We can also use a block if we need to, but let's try it with the blanket first. So you're gonna bring your hips up to the edge of the blanket and start to roll back. Maybe your head rests on the blanket, or if it feels better to have it just above the blanket. I kind of like this to the base of my neck, and then my head kind of rests on the mat. Bring my arms out wide. And this is a very restorative version of supported fish pose. So again, it doesn't look like much is happening here, but your heart is opening. Your shoulders are releasing, your arms are releasing, even a little opening through the abdomen here and the hips. Let the feet turn out to the sides. Maybe you bring your legs a little wider apart. Maybe you let the eyes close. And just follow your breath. Again, not controlling the breath, not efforting. Just following the breath. And maybe that will point out to you some areas where you're still tight or where you're feeling more open. Maybe it will give you an idea of the state of your heart as we open and open more, but in a gentle, subtle way. Not everything has to be so intense all the time. And the results of this practice will become more and more apparent to you over the next several hours or even several days. A restorative practice, I find, can stay with you for a long time. And I recommend doing a practice like this at least once a week, and more if you can, maybe 2 times a week. It's like that Banksy quote, when you're tired, learn to rest, not quit. And for a lot of us in today's society where we're constantly multitasking, we've always got something going on, we need to relearn how to rest so that we don't feel like we need to give up. Feel yourself completely supported by your props, by the mat, by the ground, by the earth. Know that the rest of your life can wait while you give yourself this beautiful time to rest. Feel your heart open. Let your breath deepen slightly. Let your body swish a little side to side. And we'll roll to the side and come up for just a moment. I want to show you this pose with the blocks. It may be a little deep for how you're feeling right now. So for restorative practice, we're going to put the blocks on their lowest height. We'll put one lengthwise at about the middle of the spine. From here, women, it's like your bra strap line. Men, maybe just a couple of inches below the armpit at the base of the shoulder blades. And one block here, either on the low or the medium height, depending on how your neck is feeling. And then we bend our knees and just very gently lower ourselves finding the support of the block. So this top block, I'm going to put mine on the medium height. Actually, I'll turn it to the low height. And that's going to be right around the base of your skull. And we'll just take a few breaths here. And you can feel how this pose with the blanket is very similar, even though the blocks do deepen it just a little bit. If this is too much sensation, you can always go back to the blanket version. On the days when you're looking for a little more, you may want to use the blocks. And again, we'll just take a few more breaths here. Let your breath deepen. And then start to roll to the side, supporting yourself, supporting your head if you need to, and coming up. And move those blocks off to the side. And we'll go back to our first pose. So we'll take that blanket here under the hips, recline onto our backs. Feet come to the edges of the mat, knees knock toward each other, arms out nice and wide. Let your eyes close. And let your breath guide your awareness down the body, noticing anything that feels different, noticing anything that comes up. Maybe letting the eyes close, allowing yourself to stay here in this stillness for a few more moments. And I'd like to share with you a short poem by Maggie Smith from her awesome book, Keep Moving. Think about geologic time, how the slightest shifts, imperceptible daily, carve canyons and make mountains. Trust that you are making progress, even if you can't yet see it. Keep moving. Let yourself sink into the mat, both heavy and light at the same time, feeling those imperceptible movements that create canyons and mountains, feeling those small things that make the biggest changes in you. I invite you to stay here in your Shavasana as long as you'd like. Or if you feel like this practice is complete for you, you can make your way slowly, gently, easily up to a seat. And we'll finish together where we started. Let's inhale, bring the arms up overhead if you're joining me in this seat. If you're in Shavasana, please rest there. Exhale, hands to the heart. Press your thumbs to your chest. Bow your head slightly and thank yourself for showing up for this gentle, restorative light practice. Take a full breath here. And on the inhale, bring your thumbs to your forehead, maybe giving yourself a little massage, connecting your mind and your heart. And on the exhale, releasing your hands to seal your practice. Thank you so much for joining me for all of my practices, and thank you so much for your support. I hope to see you in a live class soon, or maybe at one of my retreats. My next one that's planned is in June 2023. You can always check out my Facebook page for more details. I just love connecting with each and every one of you. So I hope you enjoyed this practice, and I hope to see you soon.